Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Minh and I'm your host from NDIS Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Today we have a repeat speaker, someone who's been on our show 3, maybe 4 times already. Brendon, Woolf, how are you?
Good, thank you, Minh. It's good to be back.
Brendon is now part of our team as an employee. He's a participant lead in our office, but he works remotely, obviously, because he can't get up our stairwell in our office. Sorry about that, Brendon.
That's okay. It's crazy to think that we've come full circle now. I'm part of the NDIS Property Australia team. It's great to be a part of such an awesome team.
Well, mate, thank you for joining us. We really want to help as many people in this industry as possible. And that starts with our own team itself, and you being on board as a participant in our office as our team member. But Brendon, why do you think you've been hired to join our team in Woolloongabba, Brisbane, as part of the NDIS Property Australia team? So the purpose of today really is to introduce you to our listeners and let them understand from our perspective the kind of impact that you can create and make from being a team member in this organisation and helping other participants and other investors and other stakeholders.
Yes. Yeah, well, sure. What we know in the NDIA space is that participants, they get bombarded with all this information from the NDIA providers and other their support networks. But what they're really looking for is they want to communicate with participants themselves. And I feel that providers in the NDIA space need to start looking at participants, employing participants with lived experience. Now, my background, I had to go through the AAT to apply for the correct SDA level of funding. And through that process, I've learned so much. And now I want to be able to use that knowledge and the knowledge that I've gained from working in previous positions with the Housing Hub and the Housing Hub. And I just want to make participants feel more comfortable and more at ease about navigating the whole home and living process. And I think me joining NDIS Properties Australia, I'm now not only sharing my knowledge and experience with participants, but I'm also starting to learn the commercial side of the SDA and the home and living process. And I think it's good for me to learn that as well, so that when I am handling inquiries, I can sort of help builders and investors who are brand new to the SDA market, and I can, advise them from a participant's point of view of what it's like building and investing into an SDA property.
Yeah, exactly. Too many investors have lack of knowledge and understanding as to the challenges that it takes for a participant to go through the journey of application for SDA, to achieve it, and then to live their life how it should be lived after they get that funding, and then also after they get the property they want to live in. And as we all know in life, it takes several moves, physical moves from house to whatever, to eventually find your forever home.
That's exactly right.
Just like any family out there would be doing, just because you buy your first home doesn't mean it's going to be your last home. So like participants as well, they will be seeking their first home away from home, the family home. And at some point, they will find their their place where they will be happy with for the rest of their lives?
Yeah, I think the one word that springs to mind here, and that's education. Education is the key to when it comes to the SDA and home and living space. Participants, they get bombarded with all this information, and like it's so easy to get distracted from the language that's used in reporting and stuff like that, and they get scared because they don't know about the SDA market. And it's not just the SDA market in general, it's the NDIS process itself. It can be very daunting to everybody, but education is key, and I'm glad that NDIS Property Australia has taken, this opportunity in bringing on a participant who has lived experience around the home and living space, and they've acknowledged that, and now that they're now wanting to utilise that.
But then you use a term that we don't have to hear often, which is home and living. Can you explain to our listeners what home and living means in the context of the housing hub or NDIA that you've grown so accustomed to, please?
Okay, the home and living space. So in the original terms of the NDIS, SDA was just a small portion of the home and living section of the NDIS. So what the NDIS has now done, or the NDIA has now done, is they've included SIL, SDA, STA, MTA into one big category, and they've called it home and living, basically. So when a participant is wanting to live in, say, a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, a high physical support needs apartment, they apply for a home and living decision with the NDIS. And what then happens with that application is it's then read and monitored by the home and living panel within the NDIA, and then they then decide what type of a housing would suit you according to your application and the evidence that you've given to them.
Gotcha. My next question is, now that you're in this role with us, what do you want to be doing and achieving for participants out there, given the platform you have with us?
I want to be able to provide more advocacy, because advocacy is very lacking in the NDIA space. And I think...
And Brendon, when you say advocacy, what does that mean?
So it means basically advocating for the participant and what they want from their NDIS plan, not just including home and living, but their plan in general. At the end of the day, the NDIS is about choice and control for the participants. They choose and they control how their supports are delivered and who delivers them and whatnot. We all know that and we all understand that, but we need people who have experienced the process, who have gone through the challenges and the ups and downs of the NDIS, and we need people advocating for these people who potentially probably don't have a voice for themselves, or have no option or path to go down to ask, can someone help me? And, assistance with this ever-changing NDIS world is something that participants are wanting.
Gotcha. Now, recently you posted on LinkedIn calling out to people out there being providers and support coordinators to reach out to you for you to hear their story and do a podcast interview as well. Now, I believe that someone has reached out to you already recently. Is that right, Brendon?
Yeah, that's correct. I've got a participant. I won't reveal their name, but I've got a participant who is wanting to participate in a podcast. I'm actually in communication with them currently about an appropriate time and of when we can do this. But I am calling out to all participants around home and living. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear your journeys, and I just don't want to hear the good side. I want to hear the bad side as well, because there are problems within the home and living space. And I think if everyone, not just providers, builders and investors, shared their issues, but we need to hear from the participants themselves. Now, most recently, I got to attend the SDA conference here in Brisbane, which I found really interesting to learn about the different sides of the SDA, not just the application process, but like the legal stuff in terms of contracts and from an assessor's point of view. And I felt the one thing that was lacking was a participant voice from there wasn't really a participant that gave their story and their experiences. And I actually said that at the end of the conference when the conference organizer asked for feedback, and she actually said to me that she would love for me to participate and speak at the conferences next year.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
I kind of put my foot in it there. But you know what? If me sharing my journey and my story helps other people, then it's a win-win.
Yeah, exactly. We all want to see more success stories like yours, Brendon. And the only way is to hear the real life stories of people, participants' stories, and for us as outsiders to understand their struggles and their journey through the NDIS and even the SDA, because the SDA world is totally different from the SIL core supports world.
And I think that's where a lot of people get mixed up, is the difference between SDA and the difference between SIL. And again, education is the key, especially in the support coordinator land. A lot of support coordinators, you go to them and go, oh, I want to apply for home and living, and they don't know about it. They're not fully up to date with the latest changes and the latest changes and what's happening within that space. And that's another thing that I want to get through with my role is holding webinars with a support coordinators specifically around home and living, because that was the problem that I had with my home and living, is my support coordinator thought I had the correct level of funding when, as a matter of fact, I actually didn't.
So you're saying your support coordinator did not understand your requirements, is that correct?
Yeah, so I'll just quickly tap back to my journey. When I applied for SDA back in 2019, I was granted a funding level of 3 participants shared with 1 support worker. So it was the 1-to-3 shared ratio. And my support coordinator at the time thought, yep, I had the 10-to-1 level of funding, which I do have now, thanks to the AAT process. But yeah, he thought that if I had any level of funding under that 10-to-1, I would be okay. And it's luckily for Adapt Housing, David Whitelaw, who actually picked up on the mistake, and we had to go down the path that we did, and so on and so forth, and the rest is history.
Brendon, can I ask you a question? You say the word 3-to-1, and then you say the word 10-to-1. Can you please explain to our listeners in what context do you mean 10-to-1?
Yeah, okay. So at the 10-to-1 level of funding, so in its original form, it's changed now. It was called, so you would have 10 participants all living in their own apartment, townhouse or villa with a 1 support worker sharing supports with all those 10 participants living in that 1 complex. And it used to be called the concierge model of SDA. It is now being replaced with the OOA, which is the on-site overnight assistance model. So that support worker is there 24 hours a day, and you can tap into that service when you don't have your regular support. If you need urgent assistance, say, for example, you drop something on the floor and you can't pick it up, you would then call for the overnight on-site assistance support, the carer on site to come and assist you to come and pick that item up.
Now, just to clarify for our listeners, it does not necessarily mean there's only one carer for 10 participants.
No, that's correct. So in my complex, so I live in an apartment complex and we have 2 levels and there is 2 carer apartments, 1 on each level, and there is a carer in those apartments at all times. So what happens is inside your apartment, you have assistive technology where you have an intercom system, and if you drop something and you need assistance, you call on the intercom, and then your call will go directly to that carer that's in that carer apartment, and then they will answer your call. And if they're dealing with another participant that lives in the property, they'll just say, look, I'm busy with another participant at the moment. Is it urgent? And are you able to, wait a couple of minutes and then I will come and assist you? So that's how that funding model works. And that was the right funding model that I thought would best suit me at the time when I was applying for my SDA.
And so just to help educate people who's listening, different participants have different funding levels.
Yeah.
Or for supports. Could be core supports, community access, or whatever it may be, right? And by having used to be conservation model, now the 10-to-1 model, shared core supports means lower costs being used up in your funding levels, which makes it more efficient for the NDIA, more efficient in terms of expenditure for the participant, and more efficient by the support service provision on site, managing more than just one.
It comes down to that value for money thing that the NDIS keep talking about when they're, building your NDIS plan. Like one of the criteria is it value for the money that they're providing you?
Are you happy in your environment that you live in, Brendon?
Like every new adventure, there's always teething problems at the beginning. And I had a couple of issues with the cell provider that was in my complex. I wasn't the only one. Quite a few of the other participants did. And we approached the SDA provider and the Adapt Housing, and, we had good consultation, and it was decided that, a new cell provider would be appointed. And ever since, the change, things have been working really well. I finally have all the assistive technology that I need in my apartment. As of next week, I will have all my lights and blinds and all voice activated. And I think my apartment, out of all the apartments in the complex, will be the only one that will be fully set up.
So, Brendon, let me ask you this question. How long have you been living in this complex?
So I moved into my complex in April of 2020, and it's now August 2023. So about 3 years now. So nearly 3 years.
Excuse my ignorance or not, but why has it taken 3 years for you to get automation blinds and AT technology?
Good question. And so,
because from my memory, your fight in the AAT was about your SDA funding.
Yep.
So surely this automation and AT stuff is relevant to your normal self-funding, right, or not?
You would think so, but no. And a lot of participants don't know this, is that if you have... So I applied for assistive technology in conjunction with my SDA application. So what I did was I went out and I got my OT to do the functional capacity assessments. I got her to do the report, write the application. I got her to get the quotes for the assistive technology items that I needed. So like ceiling hoists, blinds, and automotive doors. And what we did was, instead of submitting it in bits and pieces, we submitted it all in one go. And what had happened was, because when I did my S100. So for those that don't understand, the S100 is a review of a reviewable decision. So there are certain stages that your applications go through. So what happened was they declined the SDA portion of the application, and when I lodged my AAT application, they actually froze my NDIS plan. So because it's before a legal court, the whole plan gets frozen and locked. And so any other applications, so in terms of whether you have applications for assistive technology items or applications for other extra funding that you may need within your plan, that gets locked. And it gets locked up until you have a decision by the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. Now, the only way that you may be able to get applications outside of what's before the AAT approved, you would have to do what is called a Section 42D of your NDIS plan. For those of you who do not know what that is, it is a plan remittal. So you would have to go into negotiation, you and your lawyers, alongside the NDIA lawyers, and you would have to negotiate about what actually you need in your NDIS plan so you can make it through to the end of your AAT application. Because my AAT journey went for so long, I had several negotiations about several pieces of equipment, and I finally got my automotive doors 12 months ago. So it's quite a lengthy process to go through.
Wow, what a lengthy, taxing and stressful process to go through, having all your funds locked up, Brendon. So it must be tough for anyone out there who's go through the appeals process, hey?
Yes, but subsequently, as of July 1, 2022, they have changed the rules again.
Mm-hmm.
So it now doesn't matter if you are trying to apply for something that doesn't affect your AAT application, they can review other portions of your plan. It just happened to be that because my application was submitted before July 1 of 2022, I had to go through the old process.
Gotcha.
So part of the legacy cases that the minister talks about when he talks about the AAT.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we'll leave that story for another day then.
I'd actually like to leave that story way behind now. Like I'm moving on to bigger and better things.
Good. I hope that we can do some more. You can do some more advocacy work with us and other providers like Adapt Housing, just to get better educate support coordinators out there, Brendon. And then also maybe you and Debbie from our office can also work with support coordinators and plan managers and providers.
So if participants or anybody wants to get in contact with me, you can email me at brendon@participants.com.au, or you can visit my LinkedIn page. It's Brendon Woolf. That's BRENDON WOOLF. And you can shoot me a message through there or email me and we can have conversations.
Brendon's here to help anyone who wants to learn more and understand more about the journey that participants have to go through. Yeah.
It's not just participants, it's families too. Families are a big part of this because, as you know, people with disabilities are vulnerable, especially our young ones that still live within the family home. A lot of the old school generation get a little bit anxious about what's going to happen with their loved one when they're no longer around and able to advocate or support them. So yeah, I'm open to providing assistance to everybody and especially families, because you have young adults So they're thinking about, what is life going to be like after school? When am I going to be able to move out of home and have a job and like do all that sort of stuff? And I think things like the NDIS and SDA, the home and living, sorry, that opens a lot of doors for a lot of school leaders, and it can say, you know what, this dream that I have is now achievable and possible.
Brendon, I've just received an email this morning from the NDIS quarterly report, just announced this morning. It says that as of June 2023, there are now 610,000 NDIS participants on the scheme.
That is insane, and I bet you over half of those are still children.
48% are under age 7.
It's crazy, and to think by 2032 they are predicting 1 million participants on the scheme. We have to keep this scheme sustainable. But how do we do that? It all starts with the consultation process, with providers and people with disabilities. We need to keep having those conversations about how can we make the scheme more user-friendly? How can we, improve it for the people that need it?
Yeah. I just want to correct what I just said before. I made a mistake. Let me read the data highlights so it's clear what the numbers are. As of June 23, 610,000 participants are receiving NDIA support, and this continues to grow. 21,500 new participants joined the NDIS this quarter. Of the new participants who joined, 48% were children under age of 7. So 48% of the 21,000, okay? Yeah, but I do know that roughly 50% of all the participants, 610,000, is under 18 years of age. That's true.
That seems so many young children, and they're going to grow up, and it's going to become even bigger. And the scheme, what we know, it's currently under review, the 5-year review. How will that look like again in 5 years' time? Like, it's going to be a forever changing space, and the key to that is ensuring that everyone is kept on the same page and kept up to date with the latest changes, and they're open to evolving and rapidly changing, because what may be good now may change again in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
I think the main concern that we have at the moment within the scheme is we've been hearing a lot over the last couple of years about people appealing decisions, not just home and living, but NDIS decisions in general. And we've had, and I've mentioned this before on a podcast, is that the government talked about abolishing the AAT. We need to start seeing what the NDIA is planning to do to replace that system. We've had trials of an appeals process, but we haven't seen any information, and I urge the minister to start sharing those outcomes and start sharing the data for that, to give participants and their families some kind of peace of mind, or to make them aware of what they're about to come up against if they're thinking about appealing their decisions. It's critical, and it needs to start happening now.
Yes, Brendon, totally agree. I think that about wraps up our session today, Brendon. I think moving forward, you'll have plenty of opportunity to talk to other providers and participants and our staff about your thoughts and ideas about certain aspects of the SDA scheme and also the NDIS. And we do look forward to having more of your contribution to what we do here on the podcast, Brendon. And I hope that you can come up with some good ideas and topics that can be presented in a manner which our listeners would love and enjoy to listen to about your experience and your plans ahead, and then also your hopes and everything else out there in front of you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on today, Minh. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really am looking forward to seeing what happens within NDIS Properties Australia. We've got a lot of new exciting things happening where we're just launching our new respite service. That looks so exciting, and I can't wait to start seeing participants accessing that service, because we're getting a lot of inquiries about that service. So I'm really keen to see where that goes. And, I want to see it grow and prosper into something even bigger. So I'm really keen and excited for it.
Done. Thank you, Brendon. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.